I've ordered a sirloin of beef and all I asked for was a boneless sirloin with a longer than usual tail. So let's just look at what I've received and is it exactly what I require? Because often with specifications we don't give the supplier enough information to meet our needs, and often is the case that we end up with something turning up that is not fit for the purpose that we had in mind. So whole sirloin, long tail. I want to do two things with this. I want to produce a specification for a roasting joint, but I also want to do something for steaks. So I'm actually going to use half of the sirloin. So if I just separate this into two, before I look any further, we will use this section then to prepare a roast. So working with the half sirloin, let's look to see what has been delivered and is it exactly what I wanted. Bear in mind, all I asked for was a sirloin with a long tail and that it was to be boneless. So yes, it has a long tail and it is almost boneless. And what I mean by that is I have bone fragments here on a ragged edge. Now, as far as I'm concerned, this will end up as waste and it's going to come off the cost of my end product. Also, I've got some loose trimmings that need to be tidied up. So I still have a little bit of work here. The only way I can get around not having to do this work is to actually specify closer to my requirement. So at this point, it is my problem now that I've received it like this, having not expressed my tighter wishes. For a roast, do I need a longer tail or a flap to wrap over a stuffing or a filling, which is exactly what I wanted. So the tail is correct, but I've still got bone splinters, excess fat, and I've got a large wedge of fat across the top. Now I could have specified to my supplier for those to be removed before I receive it. Of course this is going to be an extra cost, but I look upon it as if I can do some of the work and utilise some of the pieces I remove, it can be a bonus for me. But if you can't utilise any of the pieces, it's tightening that specification up with your supplier. So, as I said, if we want the tail, is it to wrap over? Is that tail even? Is it clean? Fat pieces, so I need to remove any of the extra internal pockets of fat. I have bone sheath from where the ribs from this section were removed. So again, that's a waste. And then just finally trimming so that that tail is fairly even in thickness. No untoward excess fat or heavy gristles. Bone sheath on the inside, again, goes hard in cooking, doesn't help with the joint, so just needs to be removed. A little bit of coarse tissue there. Luckily no deep incisions or slashes, very important to check, because the more cuts that the butcher has made, the more opportunity for meat juice to come out during cooking and dry up the finished product. A thick wedge of fat across the back, but underneath that fat there is a thick silver sheet of gristle. So again, it could be specified that you want this removed before delivery. Otherwise, it's a job for you in the kitchen before actually starting to cook. So we need to just take this thick piece of gristle that runs right across the back of the sirloin. Off that comes in one piece. Just again trimming. Now again, if you wanted to take this even further down into the trimming process, we can remove thick silver gristle that lies across the top of that eye muscle. So again, it's a matter of going in and just lifting that little bit of flesh up to start with, so we can get down to that silver gristle. Like so, and then putting the knife underneath, taking that off a piece of meat. It's all about the finished product when serving. If this gristle is left on at this stage, it just means when you come to plate up, every customer is going to get a piece of this gristle in every slice. So it's about specifying your end product and working that to it. So we're just taking that thick silver gristle off, so making sure that we've not left any deep incisions into that underlying meat, and then just taking that gristle off, nice straight line, like so. Small piece of chain muscle there comes off. That fat just rolls over nicely, and that then is your boneless sirloin. If you need to check the fat thickness, it's always good to make sure that it's fairly even in thickness, so that when you come to plate the product, you're not getting some of the slices with thick fat and others with thin. So it's fairly even. That is a very basic boneless roast with a long tail that gives you a good covering of fat on both sides. And then it's up to you then to skewer, string or band if wished. So here we have our finished, very basic Scotch beef sirloin roast. But to make that even tighter and more presentable, maybe we should have looked at not ordering it or specifying that we didn't need the long tail. So what we're looking at now is to reduce that tail down, cutting parallel with the back line of the carcass, taking that tail flap off, and there we have a nice uniform sirloin roast of Scotch beef. Beautiful covering of fat, but with our thick gristle removed. And then it's up to yourself if you want to leave that as a whole piece, reduce it down in size, or actually put a few strings around it. So here we have our finished, very basic Scotch beef sirloin roast.